welcome to another episode of the 813 Exchange, and today we have John LaRocca with My Home Tampa Bay on the podcast. Excited to have you, buddy.
Great to be here, Andrew. Thanks for having me.
So talk about, the real estate market, Tampa, your story. How'd you become a realtor?
Wow, man, that's like a blast from the past. But I actually was hanging out at a nice spot in North Tampa called the Vine, and I ran into a gentleman who's got a company. It's like a boutique firm called Ocean Blue Realty, and he challenged me, to kind of take the next step in my career. I'd been involved with mortgages in the past, and I was in school and just trying to find my way, and he ended up being a really good mentor. He pushed me, so I ended up going through all the schooling, getting my license, and and working two jobs for a while as he mentored me like really heavily for the first year. That was the story of how I kind of got in. I'd always kind of grown up around real estate. My grandfather had a contracting business and was always involved with real estate and realtors. And like I said, I was in the mortgage business. And then actually my brother and mother are also realtors, so it's kind of turned into a family business. Never a dull moment at the dinner table, if you know what I mean. That's for sure. Always something to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. And, one thing is getting into this, you were trying to explain to me how important it is for somebody who wants to be a realtor to have a mentor going into it versus going into it blind. Can you talk about the importance of that and like the top three things that you learned when working with a mentor, where you're like, if I just like do these items, like I'll be, better than 90% of the pack?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, man, that's a great question. Having a mentor is pivotal because when you're going through school, or I think schooling for anything, they only prepare you for so much. It's more of the book side of the learning, and then there's a lot of different factors that involve the people and the process. That was kind of what we bought into for that first year. So I mean, if I did nail three things down, it would be getting organized, getting your presence established, and luckily for me, having that mentor, he had been there, done that. The business is constantly evolving and changing, so I was able to really get the important things that worked locked in. Website, having that presence, social media presence, lots of marketing aspects. So, having that for the first one, kind of teaching me the ropes as far as being able to vet properties and vet people with the right questions. That's a big one. Is kind of knowing how to approach things and getting experience through transactions. And then the third and final thing he taught me in this business was just to always put the people first. It's a relationship business through and through. When you're genuine and you're authentic, that really shows through, and it really sticks out in this day and age. So those are probably some of the top three things that worked for me and for a mentor. I think to everybody it'd probably be a different look. But having that mentor is just huge. It's invaluable, really. And typically when you get into the real estate business, you can get involved with a mentor or maybe a larger team, and typically you will, give up a little bit more of your commission to pay for that. But in the end, it's well worth it, and I wouldn't have done it any other way, honestly. So.
Yeah, definitely. And I think customer-based focus is important. Like obviously for our viewers.
Definitely.
John had sold property for my parents, and they actually had somebody else do another property prior, and they were like extremely upset with the experience because they felt like, okay, the prior one was different because they were remodeling and selling. This one they weren't remodeling really and selling, or they did like a couple touch-ups. Remember that?
Yeah.
But
oh yes, I remember.
Yeah, but just being able to communicate with the actual workers and get stuff done and get like kind of like a checklist and get this thing ready to close, because like I guess like how it is dealing with these lenders and like their requirements, and they might have certain requirements that you're not used to. So like how important is it to have like a good like top 3, 5, 7 items that you check for, where you're like, okay, like there's no way we're gonna close this thing if like these things aren't correct?
As far as like approaching just like a house for somebody to like,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
gosh, there's so many factors really. The first thing we look for is like structural, type issues that can come up because obviously the home needs to be insurable, and Florida has gotten rather very tight on their requirements for the to what's insurable. So a home always has to be able to pass a 4-point inspection. Make sure there's no termites if you're a VA buyer because there's different loan products as well. So yeah, really just making sure that I don't see any red flags up front, checking the disclosures, making sure there weren't any crazy insurance claims on the property, making sure it didn't have any settlements as far as like sinkholes or things of that nature. You want to vet all that stuff out of the way. A lot of people nowadays are paying attention to if a property's in a flood zone or not in a flood zone. So that's something you want to do up front. And then also, before entering into a contract, especially when there's a financing involved with a lender, you always want to be able to check the market research and the comparables in the area. Make sure what the seller is asking is an actual market price, so that when you get to the appraisal stage, that you don't have any issues. So yeah, those are main things up front that you want to look out for, because if you see any of those things up front, it's something that needs to get negotiated with the seller in my mind even before you go into escrow, because if not, then you're just wasting time, money, effort, and nobody wants to do that, right?
Yeah, so how would you say like the market is right now in Tampa Bay specifically? Do you feel like it's more of a buyer's market right now we're in 2025 going into this year? Do you think if it's a buyer's market, is it going to go to a seller's market eventually, or where's the market right now for Tampa?
Well, I wish I had that crystal ball.
Yeah.
I would go back and do a lot of things different, but what I can tell you right now, what are we, January 4th of 2025, hard to believe we're saying 2025.
Yeah.
But, just after an election cycle, our area was impacted by a couple of storms that a lot of folks are relocating and still fixing up a lot of the waterfront properties here in the area. So at this point in time, we are probably more of a buyer's market with some more inventory sitting, especially inventory from the storms. A lot of those homes sat, and then we came into the holidays. As we get into December, here in Florida, the market will still move, but not as quickly. It's normally like forced relocations and whatnot. But in a nutshell, right now it is a buyer's market. I could see it potentially turning as a new regime takes over, and we'll see what happens with the economy and the rates, the unemployment reports, and all that. So I think we'll see it probably balance out more. So for buyers right now, it's a good time to get a good deal on a house. There's a lot of good loan products out there. You can get some concessions right now actually from sellers, maybe getting some of those closing costs picked up so you can stay a little bit more liquid. So those are all good things. But as a seller, you can still sell your home right now. I just can't stress the importance enough of price positioning when you sell your home. Unfortunately, it's not the golden rush with the COVID days where they could just pick a price out of the sky and it would just sell.
Yeah.
We were seeing homes go for 100K over asking, waiving appraisals, inspections. It's just not that market anymore. So you need to do your research and be really mindful of what the other homes are selling for. Buyers are able to do a lot of diligence nowadays. They have a lot of information at their fingertips. So you want to be mindful of that and make sure that when you walk in that the space is clean and you do your fresh painting and just make the house look really appealing to buyers when they walk in.
So now that you've obviously been doing this a long time,
13 years.
13 years he's been doing this. So I guess a question I have is, what's easier to represent? And obviously they all present their challenges, but is it easier to represent the buyer or the seller?
They have their own quirks and challenges for sure. My preference for me personally is I like to represent sellers. Okay. So I'm primarily a listing agent, probably 80% listings, 20% buyers. A lot of the time I work with buyers when my sellers are buying another property after we've sold their other home. Or I'll get a referral for a buyer. Obviously, I'll always take care of my client base and referrals. But working with sellers is nice because I have a good background in marketing, and so I really enjoy, taking high quality images. Not myself, but a great photographer that we found, a good vendor that we work with for Brave Frameworks. We get them out there and do high-end videos. Make sure that the properties are showcased on Zillows. Love to do broker opens and mingle with other agents and try to pair the property with the right buyer. So I enjoy all that, and it's nice as well because on the weekends, you get to kind of run things from home base. You're not running around all hours of the night. So I do prefer that for longevity as well. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. No, I understand that completely.
Yeah.
So buyer-wise, I guess, how many buyers do you really represent a year if you don't do that many?
I do anywhere between 50 and 70 transactions a year. I think this year we were closer to the 70 mark. And I don't know, probably 10 to 15 buyers a year, and then the rest are pretty much all listings.
Yeah. Oh, so that's not too many. How when people do look to buy though, especially when they come down here, how many places or how many showings are you really giving them before they're okay, they make up their mind? There's got to be some people out there that are just yep, that's the one, and then some people that are drag you through it.
It's so funny. My family and I joke all the time. We wish that it could always be an episode of House Hunters, where I show 3 houses and you got to pick one. Unfortunately, it does not work that way, Andrew.
Yeah.
Sometimes I actually really enjoy really particular buyers because they know what they want. Those folks can walk into even just the first or second property I show them and pull the trigger because they know. Indecisive buyers, and there's nothing wrong with that. Making sure you're looking and really trying to find the right space. But I've had a few wish they could have gone back to buyers they had seen previously, but unfortunately by that time, they've gone under contract into escrow. But I've showed one house to many buyers, and I've shown as many as 100 to others. So at the end of the day, you just want your client to be happy.
Yeah.
So if that takes 1 houses or 30 houses, you want to be there for them and make sure they're going to be happy with it for the long term, because this is a relationship business. I want to put somebody in their house and have them call me 7 years later, 10 years later. So I'm okay taking the extra time and effort to make sure they get to where they want to be.
Yeah. So doing about 70 transactions a year, 50 to 70. Are you still seeing that same influx of people that are from New York, California, and other states that are migrating to Florida? Do you think it's slowing down? Do you think it's going to continue to grow? Because I know that Florida voter registration in Florida as a census just continues to grow. Actually, they undercounted the census in 2020. And it's Florida was supposed to have 4 or 5 more electoral votes, which they'll make up in 2030. But do you still feel there's that influx? Yeah, do you still feel there's that influx of people moving down here?
100%. I mean, I think for anybody that's been in Tampa for a couple of years can jump in their car and get on Dale Mabry for 5 minutes and realize that there are a lot of people in our area now. And it's just growing year by year like crazy, like wildfire. I'm always seeing the Northeast connection from New York to Florida, Jersey to Florida. I see it frequently throughout the year. A lot of people just want to get out of the cold. Could be taxes, could be politics, depending where they are on that side. But yeah, that hasn't slowed down. I have seen post-COVID the California influx slow down. I will see it here and there, but I've normally seen it lately just because of job changes and that kind of thing. So, that's kind of where I'm seeing. The Northeast connection is still very prevalent, with probably the West Coast one not as prevalent at this point in time.
Yeah, at this point in time.
Yeah.
Interesting. So here's a question: have you ever done a single lot, just flipped a lot? As a residential lot for a buyer who was just going to bring in and develop it themselves?
Okay, so flipped a lot for a client?
Yes.
I have, yeah. Yep. Yeah, it's, normally, I've had it happen in this situation typically, and here's a good fun fact for any investors. If you're ever going to buy a property in a flood zone, always check with FEMA on something called a 50-50 rule. because the FEMA will only let you do so much improvements to a property, up to 50% of the actual property value. If you have to do more than that to bring the property up to speed, FEMA will not let you do it. So in that case, folks are forced to tear down the properties and turn them into lots and having to make the lot sales that way. So I've had to do a few that way over the past. Yeah, it's worked out generally okay for most, with that. But yeah, it's something that happens, especially in the right areas, South Tampa. It's always good to try to find good teardowns that you could turn into a good lot, because there's some excellent builders in the area that can come in and put some beautiful, modern homes in. So
yeah, so
all about the numbers and the right opportunity.
Yeah, it's funny you brought that up, because that actually happened in somebody we know in St. Pete, that FEMA 50/50 rule. And
it's something with all the hurricanes that everybody needs to be really aware of,
Yeah. So explain the rule in detail. So again, just the first 50 is what?
So the 50/50 rule basically means, let's say you have a property in St. Pete, on the water, it's in a flood zone.
Yeah, it's $1 million for easy math.
Sure, it's $1 million. Now, however, when a property is worth $1 million, there's two parts of the value. There's the structure value and there's the land value.
Yeah.
So when FEMA does their 50/50 rule, they only take 50% of the structure value. They do not put the land value into that equation, rather.
Okay.
So, meaning if the property is worth $1 million, waterfront property, St. Pete, sure, it's worth, depending where, let's just say for this equation, $600,000-$700,000, meaning the structure is worth $300,000 to $400,000.
Yeah.
Let's just say $400,000.
Yeah.
So
it's a realistic number.
It is, right?
Yeah.
So then typically,
Yeah.
$300,000 to $400,000 means if it's $400,000, you can only do up to $200,000
Yeah.
to fix it up. And you'll have to go through the city of St. Petersburg to get all the necessary permits. They have an actual equation. So it's not like you can hand in your own contractor's bid and have them accept that. They have their own equation based on their area of what things should cost. They times it by the total square footage. And if it's within 200, you're good. If it's over, they will not allow it. Now, there are ways around it. You can get a private appraisal done, because normally the city has a value on record of the structure, but it's normally outdated. So you can hire a private appraisal or appraiser to do a private appraisal to see if that structure value has in fact increased, and you can turn that into the city for a reconsideration. A lot of people do that and are successful with it. But that is basically what the FEMA rule is.
So you're not talking about reimbursement money,
no reimbursements. This is just allowing you to do those upgrades and rehabs to the property up to that amount, based on the equation of the area.
Yeah.
So if your home is 2,000 square feet total, they will take the equation by 2,000 square feet, and they will times it by their equation. And if it's within the limits, they'll approve it. If it's over the limits, then you have a problem. You have to fix it, get a reconsideration of value, or at that point, you have a dud, and you have to knock down the property, or not knock it down, but sell it as is. And at that point, it's just lot value.
Yeah, well, that's what I noticed is when the hurricanes hit us, one thing that people were doing is they're the amount of money and time and frustration to go through to try to,
It's
repair.
not a fun process.
Yeah. A lot of people, at least in my parents' neighborhood in St. Pete, we're fortunate because when we built the house, we raised the grade.
Oh, very nice.
3 or 4 feet off sea level, but the thing is,
Smart.
yeah, the thing is some of the other neighbors, maybe FEMA didn't even allow them to do it, or it wasn't that. It's they came to a realization, if their homes got flooded, a lot of homes in the neighborhood are just vacant, because people are well, I just don't want to deal with this anymore. Knock it down, clear the lot, sell the lot, and I'm going to take my cash and I'm going to buy a condo. They just don't want to deal with the issues anymore, especially if they're they live by themselves, they're 70 years old, or,
Well, especially, it's a lot for older folks to go through. It's a lot for anyone to go through. But a lot of folks that were affected by the storms I've seen are just waiting for the insurance claims, taking the insurance money, and then dumping the house at as-is value.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of that.
Yeah, which is very different than the post-COVID era of
Exactly.
these houses, especially these houses on the water. They used to be the hottest topic. Now, I think it's important if you can raise the elevation to do so, but FEMA doesn't always let you. sometimes they make you, which I really think that they should make more people do it rather than tell them they can't do it, just because of the nature of the flood zone in Florida. Like in New York, where like I'm originally from, it's like there's no such thing as flooding, because like we live in mountains, you know, and hills and valleys, and there's like stuff like that, and there's streams. Like in Florida, you don't have that. It's just like it just floods up like this. So definitely a lot of people lost things, and there's going to be a lot of salvage homes on the market, right?
There's going to be an influx of inventory of a lot of fixer-uppers. So it'll be a chance for investors if they can buy them at the right price. If you are an investor, I would tell you, if you want to grab any of those homes, it could be a good opportunity. But you'll need to be patient on the resale. So any investments you make with those, not even a bad idea to rent. If you could buy a good deal, maybe try to rent it for a year or two. You know, the market will rebound. We have a great area, as you know, a lot of things going for us. We've been a top 10 market for years now. I think we're a little bit outside of it at this point, but things will definitely turn around. So, opportunity to be had.
Yeah, no, I definitely see things turning around 100%. And you know, now that you've been doing this for 13 years, right?
Yep.
So 13 total years of doing this, it's like, what's your, like, if you're talking to like a new realtor and they want to get into this and you were to play that mentorship role, you know, what's like a couple pieces of advice you would give them?
Gosh, that's a tough one. Normally for people just starting out, is you know, to have a side gig where you can make a little income, you know, as you get started. You know, it probably took me a good year to year and a half to be able to go full time into this endeavor. You know, so you don't want to get to the point where you know, you're desperate for a sale. You don't want things to be rushed, and people pick up on that. You know, people pick up on that. So you know, either have a really good savings nest egg, or you know, have a source of income. You know, a lot of agents will that have been in business will you know, pay, you know, agents that are starting out to do administrative tasks, sit on open houses, you know, maybe open doors and show some homes. So yeah, that would be one thing, and the next is just to never stop learning. You know, on the job training is the best training. So if you can be around somebody and be like there through the transaction, be around on the phone with a top producer as he's closing a deal or talking to his clients about an inspection, that's invaluable. So put yourself around in those certain situations where you can really pick up on that. That way that you can take care of your own clients when the time comes.
Yeah, and I think it's important mentioning the nest egg part, because, like, you know, a lot of people, like, how many people really, I forgot, there's like some crazy statistic about how many people like are realtors versus homes on the MLS. Like, you know the one?
I'm not familiar with that one, but there's a lot of realtors in Florida, that's for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of realtors in Florida, and you know, the thing is like, I see like a lot of people get into it, and they I think they think that like the first year they're not going to be able to have another job. Like they don't need any source of income. Like they're just automatically going to be crushing it and making a lot of money. And I think it's important what you say is to get yourself some sort of nest egg, because like, you know, how I would think about it is if I had like no money and I'm like, I had to close a sale, like I'm going to be a lot more transactional and like ostracize my professionalism.
Correct.
If like I desperately need the money versus like, it's like, oh, I don't need the money, it's like I built this nest egg, and or I have like a job bartending at night. You know, that could be a good gig for somebody who
it's
wants
it's
to
a
get
great
into
gig.
it.
Yeah, it's great because somebody can do that at night, even just a few days a week, and it's actually a great way to network and meet people.
Yeah.
So this is a people business, so you always got to put yourself in great social situations. You don't get plugged into your local church, bartending gig, anything like that, where you can you know, just meet some good quality people.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So, how do you feel? You know, one question I want to ask you getting into this is, you know, you deal with certain sales and you deal with certain buying agents, and you know, how do you deal with a difficult agent on a transaction where you're like, this person's just, you know, tough, picky about everything, you know?
Like the other agent?
Yeah, the other agent. Yeah, because everybody like like people watch like the Sirhan show, right?
Okay.
And they're like, oh, like like they like that show because of like the tea aspect of
Yeah,
it,
the
right?
drama to it.
Yeah, like the drama to it, and like I know there's drama to it a little bit. So like, how do you manage that? I guess, especially like when somebody's on their high horse.
So every situation's different. I can tell you, I know exactly what you speak of with the high horse or just agents behaving in a certain manner. You get to a point where you get a certain amount of experience, and you just become so focused on the transaction and not the noise around it. It took me a long time to learn that, but at this point, I just don't let it get in the way of the transaction. I don't really let it bother me at all anymore, quite frankly. So it's a choice.
Yeah.
You have to choose it and be aware of it and just expect it. And it's nice when you actually do work with another professional, and there are a ton of them in our area, great professionals in our area. But there's also some that are doing this as maybe a second or third job. So that kind of shows in a transaction. But all you can do is just try to do best by your client, keep the emotions to the side, and just try to get the transaction complete. It is a test of patience. It requires Jesus and some alcohol, but you can get it done.
No, I understand that 100%. Speaking about some good people in the market, now that you've been doing this a long time, I'm sure you have your preferred title co.
Definitely.
I'm sure you have a preferred mobile notary, maybe even, or just notary in general.
Yep.
So how important is that for a realtor to get their bait? Like when they start getting busy and they start closing more deals and this becomes a full-time thing for them, how important is it to have like that good base, especially like a backup too? Because who knows, like you could be dealing with a title company and they're like, John, like we're way too busy for your transaction or to add this transaction. So
Well, they'll never tell you that, first of all.
Oh, they'll never tell you that.
But
okay.
but I do know what you mean. So to answer your question though, I mean it's pivotal. And really, if you're a newer agent getting started out and you're not as busy, that is the time to find your people. Because you'll have a little bit more downtime. So like for me personally, I use like 2 title agencies. I have one more based in Tampa and one more based out of St. Pete. So geographically, it's good for that. Based on where the closings will be. And they both have their strengths as well, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the right personality match as well, or the type of transaction.
Yeah.
So you always want to have a couple of different options that you feel will set the transaction up for success.
Yeah, for success.
So based on that, I'll recommend a title company. I use Berlin Patent Ebling here in Tampa, and then I use Aegis Title over in St. Petersburg. They're both fantastic. And then same thing with like home inspectors and lenders. For home inspectors, we got great inspectors we work with for years, and we try to give people choices, to do their own diligence and research. But with lenders, especially, everybody just specializes in a different loan product. You know that dealing with everything that you've been dealing with. So, based on the situation, the type of buyer, personalities, it's good to have a good team around you for sure.
Yeah,
so.
I feel like in my experience of like looking at residential loans versus like commercial construction loans, like the residential loans are so much more easier going.
Well, definitely. A lot less to it, yeah.
Like they also don't have prepayment penalties, and I think it's because like people that buy a home are like buying it to live in, and it's like sometimes people building a building like this one, they're building it to sell it,
True enough. Yeah.
So like, the lender obviously makes the majority of their worth on you continuing to pay your mortgage. Right? And that's why like they ask to refinance. It's like, oh, I'm getting a lower rate. It's like, yeah, but you're going back onto the mortgage schedule, and their majority nut is within that first 3 to 5 years.
Right. That heavy interest. Yep.
Yeah, because like at least my mortgage is going to be like 92% interest, 8% principal year one, and it's like there's no way to avoid it. It's like you just got to pay yourself through it. But if you pay yourself through it long enough, it's like you get to the point where it starts like tilting like a seesaw, and you're like,
Or you try to throw that extra payment a year, that strategy in there to try to knock down a couple of years. But
which the funky thing in the tax code is that if you make that towards principal, it's not deductible, but if you make it towards interest, it is.
Yeah, crazy. You'd have to do the math to see which one would be better.
Yeah.
I'm guessing making the extra payment would be better over the long term.
Because like you think the government would incentivize you to bite down at the principal versus continue to pay interest, but unfortunately it does not work that
Everybody's
way.
got their hand out, unfortunately.
Everybody's got their hand in the
The
pot.
lesser of the evils.
Yeah, the lesser of the evils. Well, John,
No doubt.
pleasure to have you on the
Thanks for
show
having me on.
today. Definitely. Stay tuned for what's to come.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.